So what if I told you that one of the most brutal wars in ancient history didn't just crown a winner, but accidentally created a whole new way for us to be human? We're about to dig into how a bitter, decades-long fight between two cities led to a cultural revolution that put the focus on one thing: you, the individual.
Right. This is the big question we're tackling. How on earth did a 30-year war between two Greek city-states end up sparking a global cultural shift that literally shapes how you and I see ourselves today? It's a wild story of ambition, total destruction, and some absolutely spectacular unintended consequences.
Okay, so to get what happened, you've got to meet the main players. See, ancient Greece wasn't one country. It was this patchwork of fiercely proud city-states. And back in the 5th century BC, two of them stood head and shoulders above everyone else: Athens and Sparta. And believe me, these two powers could not have been more different. On one side, you had Athens, this bustling, creative democracy running a massive naval alliance called the Delian League. And on the other side, you had Sparta, a super rigid, militaristic state run by a handful of elites, an oligarchy, that controlled the land-based Peloponnesian League. This wasn't just a rivalry, it was a total clash of civilizations.
So, you've got two opposing superpowers with two completely clashing ideologies. You can probably guess what happens next, right? Greece was on an absolute collision course. The tension didn't just simmer, it boiled over into the conflict we now call the Peloponnesian War.
So what really lit the fuse? Well, it boils down to three main things. First, Athens was getting a little too big for its britches. It started using its powerful navy to boss other city-states around, and Sparta saw that as a huge threat. Second, it was a clash of systems. Athens was out there spreading this idea of democracy, which was, a pretty dangerous concept to Sparta's whole military-first society. And finally, it was just simple power politics. These two alliances were staring each other down, and it was only a matter of time before somebody threw the first punch.
After almost 30 years of just brutal fighting, a winner finally emerged. But this is where the story takes a really sharp and unexpected turn, because the winner of the war would, in a lot of ways, end up losing the peace and set the stage for something nobody could have seen coming.
And yeah, after a long, devastating war, the result was clear. Athens was crushed. Sparta had won. They were now the undisputed top dog of the entire Greek world.
But here's the kicker. What did that victory actually get them? Sparta had won the war, for sure, but the cost was about to prove catastrophic, not just for them, but for all of Greece.
That victory? It turned sour fast. Sparta's leadership style was clumsy and aggressive, and they made enemies everywhere. They were stretched so thin that just a few decades later, they got defeated by the city of Thebes. But the real story is what all this fighting did to everyone. Decades of war had bled every single major Greek city-state totally dry. They were all exhausted, broke, and divided. The whole Greek world was left incredibly weak and vulnerable.
This created a massive power vacuum. The old world of these dominant rival city-states, it was basically over. Athens was broken, Sparta was just a shadow of its old self. The stage was now set for a brand new power to rise up, and it was going to come from a place most Greeks considered the total backwoods.
And the person who stepped into that void was none other than Alexander the Great of Macedon. He didn't just fill the void, he completely shattered the old map. He stormed into this fractured Greek world, united it by force, and then he turned his sights on, well, the rest of the known world.
I mean, what this guy accomplished is just staggering. He carved out an empire that stretched all the way from Greece to India. But here's the thing, Alexander wasn't just a conqueror. He was a visionary with a pretty radical idea. Everywhere he went, he founded new cities and actively pushed for cultures to mix. He even arranged for thousands of his Greek soldiers to marry Persian women. He wasn't just building an empire, he was trying to build a whole new world.
Now, Alexander's huge empire fell apart pretty quickly after he died young, but his most important legacy wasn't political, it was cultural. The seeds he planted by mixing all these different peoples and ideas together, they grew into a brand new era in human history, the Hellenistic Age.
So, what exactly is Hellenism? Well, it's this incredible cultural mashup. Think of it as the first great wave of globalization, where Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Mesopotamian ideas all got thrown into a blender. And the new capital of this whole intellectual world, it wasn't Athens or Sparta. It was Alexandria in Egypt, home to the greatest library the ancient world had ever seen.
And this new fusion culture, it was electric.
It sparked this explosion of innovation in art, in science, in medicine. But the most radical change wasn't in what people were making, it was in how they saw themselves. The old loyalties were gone. New personal religions and philosophies popped up, all asking a brand new kind of question.
And this right here, this is the single biggest game changer. Before, your identity was your city. You were an Athenian, you were a Spartan. But in this huge, new, mixed-up world, those old group identities just crumbled. For the first time, people really started to see themselves not as just a part of a group, but as individuals, responsible for their own choices, their own salvation, and their own unique place in the universe. The we was being replaced by the me.
And that's the final, crucial thing to take away from all this. That shift, from the group to the self, born from the ashes of a war over 2,000 years ago, is the very bedrock of our modern world. So the next time you think about your own identity, your personal beliefs, or your unique place in the cosmos, just remember, you are living out a story that began when a destructive war accidentally created an entirely new way to be human.